What lies in store for us when tomorrow arrives? Every single night, as we get ready to close our eyes and sleep, this exact puzzle crosses our minds. It stands as perhaps the greatest unanswered riddle that all of humanity faces together. We simply cannot restrain ourselves from wondering what the upcoming times will bring, just as we constantly stress over the unpredictable variables that might be waiting down the road. Every single person alive would love to catch a glimpse a few days or even a few years down the line to discover exactly what their future reality will look like. Will you be experiencing the absolute life of your dreams, or is there an incredibly agonizing event waiting to catch you off guard? When you really think about it, what is the absolute worst outcome that could ever happen to you? It is death. Final mortality will inevitably claim every single one of us in the end. Absolutely no person in our entire documented history has ever successfully tricked death. And regardless of how aggressively we try to escape it or push it off, termination will reach everyone eventually. Billions of years from this moment, when our own sun expands and completely consumes the planet Earth, or even if a sudden world-ending disaster like a massive space rock collision happens much sooner, our entire presence will totally fracture into tiny invisible atoms. These remnants will be scattered across the unimaginable expanses of outer space, drifting completely aimlessly throughout the giant celestial landscape. We will ultimately go right back to the exact foundational particles that originally created us in the first place. In essence, we will simply change back into an absolute state of completely not existing. Even so, the grand universe will keep right on moving forward. The bright sun will still continue to come up and go down on an astronomical number of other distant worlds. The regular seasons will keep transitioning back and forth, and the ocean waters will continue to rise and fall precisely as they always have. Brand new stars will continuously be born, and fresh planets will keep generating, which will keep supporting the endlessly transforming web of existence. The cosmos by itself will just keep getting bigger and changing over vast periods of time. Every single occurrence will take place exactly the way it always has throughout history, with the one major difference being that your own physical body has changed form. This shift leaves you completely oblivious to the massive transformation that just occurred. Because of this, you will be totally unable to notice any of the adjustments happening all around your surroundings. Therefore, whenever you go outside and look up at the dark sky at night, always keep in mind that the glittering stars above could very well be made out of the exact atoms that used to belong to a living creature. Outer space is a literal ocean of endless possibilities. It represents a fascinating domain where even the things that seem totally impossible can actually happen. And there are specific times when strange anomalies pop up that are incredibly difficult to explain in a cosmos that is entirely ruled by unyielding mathematical rules. Just take a look at the night sky right above your head. Why exactly do the stars, which are controlled by these unchangeable mathematical constants, throw themselves around in a pattern of absolute chaos? Why is it that stars never repeat the exact same configurations anywhere in the universe? Could this completely disorganized arrangement actually be a deliberate cosmic communication? Perhaps it is a message that has been completely missed and has slipped right past humanity's awareness throughout our entire history on this planet. It could be a highly detailed message sent directly from an intelligence belonging to another world entirely. Furthermore, what should we make of the billions upon billions of individual stars that fill up the truly limitless universe? How is it even logically possible that we are completely surrounded by an infinite count of brilliant light-emitting stars, and yet the night sky above us stays completely dark? If the universe is truly without any end and has existed forever, and if all the stars are spread out evenly across the massive empty spaces of the cosmos, then no matter which specific direction we look, our eyes should hit a star. The light coming from all of these stars, regardless of how incredibly far away they are, should eventually make its way down to our planet. Since the absolute dawn of time, every single human being, who are naturally curious creatures, has pondered these exact puzzles at least once in their lives. Now, thanks to the massive tech upgrades and the widespread availability of top-tier space exploration equipment, we are closer than we have ever been to completely figuring out the mysteries that have tricked us for generations. The time has finally come to strip away the dense layers of confusion that block our view of the cosmos and finally shine a bright light on these deeply fascinating mysteries of the universe. Take a very careful look at this specific photograph. This man is Eugene Cernan, and you can see him right here giving a formal salute to the flag of the United States. He holds the historic title of being the very last human being from the legendary Apollo program to actually walk on the surface of the moon. Even so, when you study this picture much more closely, you might start to notice something that feels incredibly strange. There is not even one single star visible anywhere in the dark background behind him. As a matter of fact, every single picture that was ever snapped on the lunar surface during the world-famous Apollo missions shows a sky that is completely empty of stars. This happens despite the undeniable reality that the cosmos is completely stuffed with an infinite number of glittering stellar bodies. Even the Apollo crew members themselves openly backed up this fact, stating that they were completely unable to spot a single star in the lunar sky. This specific puzzle has created all kinds of intense arguments and wild conspiracy theories across the decades, with certain groups going so far as to use the total lack of stars as definitive proof that the entire moon landing was nothing more than a staged movie hoax. However, the real scientific explanation for this cosmic riddle goes way deeper than any cheap conspiracy theory you can find. In reality, the actual answer to this space puzzle points us right back to a massive, fundamental cosmic reality, the Big Bang. Why exactly is outer space so completely pitch black? The core concept behind this fascinating question was originally brought forward by a man named Johannes Kepler all the way back in the year 1610. Our home Milky Way galaxy by itself houses anywhere from 100 billion to roughly 400 billion individual stars, and the entire universe that we can actually observe holds somewhere around 100 billion to 200 billion separate galaxies. Based on this mathematical reality, early stargazers reasoned that because the cosmos is entirely stuffed with a seemingly endless quantity of glowing light-producing objects in every single direction, it makes perfect logical sense that every tiny patch of sky you choose to look at should hold thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of stars. This specific logic means the night sky should be completely and uniformly radiant in every single direction. Deep scientific calculations actually suggest that the night sky ought to be just as intensely bright as the literal surface of our sun. Yet this is obviously not what we experience in reality, a fact that left early astronomers completely baffled for generations. It is a massive paradox that took the scientific world nearly 300 full years to finally figure out. This specific paradox originally came out of the steady-state theory, which happened to be the most commonly believed perspective on the universe at that time in history. The steady-state theory claimed that the universe has always existed in the exact same state it is in today, and that it will continue to stay that way forever. Furthermore, this theory stated that the universe was completely infinite in its total size, possessed absolutely no beginning point in time, was completely uniform in every single direction, and did not expand at all. The very first attempts to fix this paradox focused on guessing that the vast majority of stars were simply located too far away for human eyes to spot them. However, this specific logic was super fast to be thrown out, because the steady-state theory itself argued that the universe had already existed for an infinite amount of time. This infinite timeline would easily give the light from even the most distant stars more than enough time to travel across space to reach us, which would still result in a completely glowing night sky. Johannes Kepler eventually came up with a totally different answer to the paradox by directly going against the core rules of the steady-state theory. Kepler put forward the idea that the stars throughout the universe only stretched out to a specific limited distance, and once an observer looked past that boundary, they would only see completely empty space. While this concept sounded pretty reasonable on the surface, this specific fix immediately triggered a brand new set of questions, such as exactly how far away is this outer boundary, and what could possibly exist on the other side of it. On top of that, the concept of a finite universe brought up major structural problems, specifically that the entire cosmos would eventually collapse right in on itself due to the intense gravitational attraction pulling all of its stars and planets together. This danger caused the majority of astronomers to go right back to assuming that the universe had to be infinite, and because of that, the paradox and the steady-state theory stayed exactly as they were, completely unfixed and largely ignored by the mainstream. This status quo remained until nearly 2 centuries went by, when a highly respected German astronomer named Heinrich Wilhelm Olbers brought brand new energy to the paradox, and once again put forward the question of why the night sky is dark. Ever since that moment in time, Olbers' name has been tightly linked to this specific space riddle. Once again, the standard belief during his era was that the universe was completely unmoving, infinitely old, and endless in its physical size. This time around, Olbers came up with what seemed like a very straightforward answer. If we just go ahead and assume that the universe is infinite, it makes perfect sense to figure out that the dark, solid objects inside of it would also be infinite in total number. These objects would include things like massive clouds of cosmic dust and space rocks that physically block the incoming light from ultra-distant stars, which makes them look way dimmer to our eyes. This space dust slowly takes in and cuts off the starlight as it travels through the void of space. Even in our modern world today, a huge percentage of everyday people still believe in this exact theory, drawing direct comparisons between this concept and the way normal clouds in our atmosphere block the sun's direct light and ruin our view. Cosmic debris and dust clouds could easily block out the light coming from stars in a similar fashion. However, Olbers' highly persuasive answer still doesn't completely fix the underlying issue. This is because any space rock or dust cloud would eventually absorb so much energy that it would heat up completely, causing it to start radiating that exact absorbed energy back out into space. The universe would still end up holding the exact same total amount of radiation in the end. The cosmic dust is essentially just operating as a middleman between the distant stars and the person watching from Earth. Ultimately, the total energy we would catch down on Earth would remain completely identical. So, what is the actual fix to this paradox? The true solution to the space riddle would not be uncovered until the world waited for another full century to pass. In the year 1929, when Edwin Hubble looked through his incredibly advanced and powerful telescope, he was actually hoping to find evidence of a universe that was collapsing in on itself, because that specific discovery would prove a limited universe just like Kepler had argued. But to his absolute astonishment, he discovered that the cosmos was not crashing inward at all. Instead, all the distant galaxies were actively moving away from our position, as if the actual space sitting between everything was expanding. In fact, the further away a galaxy was located from us, the faster it was speeding away into the distance. The universe clearly appeared to not be falling inward, nor was it staying completely still, but it was actively getting bigger. This mind-blowing discovery brought up a brand new question. If the universe is actively expanding right now, what exactly does that mean for the state of the early universe? Cosmologists today believe that the universe was once compressed into an incredibly tiny and unbelievably dense point, and that it expanded out at an extreme rate of speed in a historical event known as cosmic inflation. As the universe got bigger and bigger, it naturally cooled down, which eventually allowed stars and complex galaxies to finally form. This monumental discovery is what ultimately led to the creation of the Big Bang theory as we understand it today. Modern scientists believe this incredible event took place roughly 13.8 billion years ago. It stands as the single most precise model for the actual birth of our universe. Today, the vast majority of scientists agree that the universe has a specific limited age, and that it all began 13.8 billion years in the past. When we use our instruments to look at light that is 13.8 billion years old, it isn't that we fail to see stars simply because their light hasn't managed to travel to us yet. Rather, we don't see any stars because we are literally catching a glimpse of the universe before any stars had even been created in the first place. We are looking at a completely starless universe. The further out into the distance we look, the further back in time we are actively watching, until we eventually hit the ultimate edge of the observable universe. This boundary is not a physical wall, but is instead the remaining glow of the initial Big Bang, which is technically known as the cosmic microwave background. This represents the absolute most distant point in the universe that human beings can possibly observe from Earth. When we point our high-tech telescopes past the very oldest stars in existence, this is the exact light we see. This is absolutely not regular starlight, but is the literal leftover energy from the Big Bang, which creates a permanent glowing backdrop situated far beyond the stars themselves. But hold on a second, the Big Bang theory seems to introduce a brand new problem into the mix. It explicitly states that the universe was vastly brighter in its ancient past, particularly during the conclusion of the recombination era. Every single point in the local sky during that specific time frame was completely equal in its total brightness to the literal surface of our Sun, which was caused by the extreme temperatures of the universe during that stage of development. Because of this fact, the cosmic microwave background should technically be completely dominating our night skies right now on Earth. This would result in a permanent, daily need for all of us to wear dark sunglasses every single moment, just to avoid being completely blinded by the intense luminosity of the cosmos. Fortunately, this crazy outcome is entirely cancelled out by the reality that the universe is actively expanding, and this expansion did not just stop after the Big Bang took place. Instead, the stretching of space has actually grown faster and faster over time, meaning that brand new space is continuously being generated at a speed that is significantly faster than the speed of light itself. At first glance, this concept might look like a direct violation of the fundamental rule of special relativity, which clearly states that absolutely nothing can travel through space at a velocity faster than the speed of light. But in reality, it isn't a violation at all. The expansion of space is not being caused by physical objects moving through the void, but is instead caused by the literal stretching of space itself. This stretching phenomenon is driven by the actions of dark energy, an incredibly mysterious and unmapped force that is causing the expansion rate of the entire universe to actively speed up. The expansion of outer space is tracked by a specific mathematical value known as the Hubble constant, which shows the exact rate at which the cosmos is getting bigger. Right now, the top scientific calculations for the Hubble constant suggest that space is expanding at a rate of roughly 73.3 kilometers per second per megaparsec. This means that the total distance separating two specific points in space will completely double in size in about 9.8 billion years. Now, as you are probably already aware, light travels in the form of a wave, and as distant stars speed away from our position, their emitted light waves get stretched out over distance. The human eye can only detect a very specific range of wavelengths, and when those light waves get stretched out too far, our eyes can no longer see them. This phenomenon is scientifically called redshift because red happens to have the absolute longest wavelength of all the colours inside the visible spectrum. For objects that are incredibly far away, their light waves get stretched out so drastically that they transform completely into infrared light, rendering them completely invisible to human eyes. So, in a very real sense, the night sky is actually completely lit up with brilliant light. We are just completely unable to see it because of the biological limitations of our human eyeballs. However, our advanced telescopes can see it perfectly, and that is exactly why we are able to capture such breathtaking images of deep space. So in the end, this is exactly how the final answer to the paradox works out, because of the limited speed of light, combined with the reality that the universe has a finite age of roughly 13. 8 billion years, this limited age means we can only observe stars and galaxies whose light has had a sufficient amount of time to travel across the void to reach our position. The ongoing expansion of space-time makes things even more complicated. In the ultra-distant areas of outer space where the vacuum is expanding faster than the speed of light, the light coming from those specific galaxies will never be able to outrun the expansion of space, no matter what we try to do or how long we wait. We will absolutely never be able to see the light from those galaxies. It will never light up our skies. What we see when we look up at night is just a microscopic fraction of the entire cosmos. We call this specific region the visible universe, and we are completely unable to see past this definitive horizon, even if we use the most advanced telescopes ever built. This boundary isn't just a horizon in physical space, it is a hard horizon in time itself. Past the outer edge of our observable universe, light will never be able to outrun the cosmic stretching. Due to this non-stop expansion, if we look way further into the future, about 100 billion years from this moment, imagine that we build a radically powerful new telescope that should theoretically allow us to study space far beyond our own galaxy. But as we take a look through the eyepiece of this advanced telescope, we will find absolutely nothing. There will be nothing out there but total darkness and completely empty space. The future generations of humans will grow up believing that they exist inside a seemingly limitless and almost completely informationless vacuum. As the total age of the cosmos gets close to that 100 billion year mark, the accelerated expansion of the universe will cause every single other galaxy to completely disappear past the cosmic light horizon. This means the light from other galaxies will no longer possess the ability to travel to us. To say it another way, galaxies will be aggressively pushed out of the observable universe entirely, and they can never be watched ever again. As we sit here today, we are losing roughly 20,000 stars every single second, and when you really pause to think about it, we are incredibly lucky to exist at a specific point in time when we have access to such a massive treasure trove of cosmic information. Sure, there are still a lot of things regarding the universe that we do not fully comprehend, but at least we have the genuine hope that one day we will. The distant future of 100 billion C, however, will be so incredibly deprived of data that when scientists point their future version of the Hubble telescope toward a seemingly vacant area of space, the image sent back will be completely empty. Of course, the exact same reality applies to us today. We have absolutely no way of knowing what truly exists past the boundaries of our own observable universe. But one final question still remains unanswered. Why exactly are these famous photographs taken on the moon completely empty of stars? Surely with absolutely nothing blocking the view, like a thick planetary atmosphere, we ought to be able to spot some stars in the background. To understand this, we have to look at how colour is actually generated. Colour is a highly complex interaction between light and physical matter. Light is made up of electromagnetic waves that feature all kinds of different wavelengths, and when light hits an object, specific wavelengths get absorbed by that object, while other wavelengths are reflected or passed through. The colours that our eyes perceive are the direct result of the specific wavelengths of light that bounce back to our eyes. For instance, if an object looks red to you, it is because that object has absorbed every other colour in the visible spectrum, like blue and green, and only bounces red light back to your eyes. In a similar way, if an object looks white, it is because it bounces back all the colours of the visible spectrum together, while an object that looks pitch black absorbs every single colour and reflects absolutely zero light back to your eyes. We are able to see a beautiful blue sky on Earth because the tiny particles floating in our atmosphere act like miniature mirrors. The literal meaning of the word atmosphere comes from atmos, meaning vapour or atoms, and sphere, meaning globe. During the nighttime hours, the sun sets below the horizon, and there is no longer bright sunlight in the sky to block our view of the stars. On the moon, however, there is absolutely no atmosphere to scatter light around, but we still don't see stars in the photos. This happens because the light coming from the sun travels in a perfectly straight line without ever being scattered, meaning all the colours stay locked together, so when you look toward the sun, you see a brilliant white light. This is exactly what happened to the Apollo astronauts. Every single lunar landing was scheduled to take place on the day side of the moon. Even though there was no air above their heads, the intense reflection of the sun's light bouncing off the bright lunar soil temporarily blinded their eyes. The extreme glare and high-intensity brightness coming from the sun completely blinded both the astronauts and their camera sensors from being able to capture the dim stars. However, one specific astronaut noted that he could actually see some of the brightest stars with his own eyes when he stood entirely within the dark shadow of the lunar module, provided he looked straight up with his protective gold visor raised. Just imagine if astronauts were to land on the far night side of the moon and let their eyes completely adapt to the pitch-black surroundings. They would get an absolutely jaw-dropping view of the stars. If the Earth suddenly lost its atmosphere, our own sky would look exactly like the moon's sky. Currently, when you factor in modern light pollution and the physical limits of human vision, we can only see roughly 3,000 individual stars during a clear night, and that number drops to just 300 stars when the moon is completely full. This is the exact reason why a lot of space scientists believe it would be an incredible idea to spend the necessary money and time to construct a massive space telescope directly on the permanent night side of the moon. The mystery of Olbers' paradox continues to be one of the most fascinating riddles in modern cosmology, and finding its solution has given us a drastically deeper comprehension of the true nature and structure of our universe. When we consider the incredible fact that our universe contains hundreds of billions of completely separate galaxies, each packed to the brim with millions and billions of individual Earth-like worlds, the concept of life flourishing elsewhere becomes an absolute mathematical certainty. Out in the vast, unending reaches of the dark cosmos, it is highly irrational to believe that we are completely isolated on this single blue planet. As the famous physicist Albert Einstein once wisely noted, given the truly immense scale of the cosmos, we are definitely not alone in this vast expanse. This exact sentiment is no longer just a fringe belief held by a few passionate space enthusiasts. According to a highly detailed and thoroughly comprehensive public survey conducted by the Pew Research Center, a massive 2/3 of the entire American population now firmly and confidently believe that extraterrestrial life forms absolutely exist out there in deep space. Furthermore, At least 51% of those surveyed express absolute confidence that the mysterious, unidentified flying objects regularly reported by highly trained military personnel are very likely definitive evidence of highly advanced, intelligent living beings operating completely outside of our own home planet Earth. When you factor in the truly astonishing and revolutionary progress happening every single day in the modern field of astrophysics, mainstream cosmic scientists today strongly hold the belief that there is an incredibly high, almost undeniable probability that we will successfully uncover tangible proof of extraterrestrial intelligence within the next few decades. One exceptionally distinguished and highly respected astronomer working at the SETI Institute, a man named Seth Shostak, has gone so far as to make an incredibly bold public proclamation. He states that in a mere couple of decades from our current point in time, human beings will unequivocally and without a single doubt uncover concrete material evidence that definitively confirms the actual existence of intelligent life forms living way past the boundaries of our world. As our species aggressively continues to cast its ever-expanding scientific net across the unfathomable depths of the cosmos, continuously cataloguing and capturing undeniable proof of thousands of newly discovered alien worlds, one ancient, haunting riddle continues to echo through our collective thoughts. Is there actually anybody else out there listening? The staggering, mind-boggling scale of the grand cosmos, with its literal billions of swirling galaxies, radiant stars, and accompanying planets, makes it completely obvious to anyone paying attention that a genuine opportunity for biological life to ignite and evolve exists in countless other places. Even if we choose to conservatively accept the traditional argument that the initial spark of living organisms down on Earth was a highly unique, extraordinarily rare cosmic fluke, the raw, massive size of the grand universe still functions as a giant, limitless blank canvas that allows for an endless diversity of life to slowly emerge over time. It is an astronomical landscape that very likely includes highly intelligent beings existing at absolutely all imaginable levels of technological development. This cosmic spectrum could easily range from the absolute least advanced, primitive cultures to the most highly evolved, unfathomably advanced societies imaginable. Just take a brief moment to visualize yourself completely alone, weightlessly floating all by yourself in the absolute silent vacuum of deep space. The total absence of sound in that environment can feel completely deafening, and the sheer emptiness stretching out in every direction can easily become deeply overwhelming to the human mind. At your very first glance into that vast void, you would likely believe with absolute certainty that you are completely isolated, totally cut off from any form of companionship or warmth. However, if you stop and carefully contemplate the incredibly complex, thriving biological ecosystems that are actively living inside your own physical body right this second, you realize how much we take for granted and regularly ignore. Millions upon millions of microscopic microbes and tiny living organisms are actively thriving directly on your outer skin, or working inside your digestive system this very moment. Their entire existence occurs completely unbeknownst to your conscious mind. While these microscopic organisms obviously do not possess our specific level of advanced human intellect, their constant living presence serves as a deeply moving, poignant reminder that total solitude is very often nothing more than a psychological illusion. In a strikingly similar way, the stubborn human idea that we are the sole occupants of this infinite universe might turn out to be a massive, collective delusion. Completely hidden from our current awareness, life scattered throughout the vastness of the cosmos could easily be demonstrating a truly immense range of intellect and awareness that we completely and unconsciously overlook on a daily basis. Human intelligence by itself is an absolutely extraordinary, marvelous evolutionary feature that has completely and profoundly shaped the entire course of our history and existence on this planet. Its actual manifestation can show up in an incredibly diverse and fascinating variety of forms throughout the endless expanses of the outer universe. On distant exotic planets orbiting alien stars, completely different creatures may have slowly evolved truly remarkable and exceptional cognitive capabilities, expertly honed across eons by unique environmental pressures, gravitational forces, and distinct evolutionary pathways. Some alien civilizations out there might currently be significantly less advanced than our own, perhaps existing in a state that is completely comparable to the earliest, most primitive stages of human development. These developing beings would likely possess only the most basic communication skills, utilizing incredibly primitive tools and technologies, while holding a highly limited, highly restricted understanding of the grand universe around them. Conversely, on the absolute opposite end of that cosmic spectrum, many highly advanced extraterrestrial civilizations may have completely surpassed our own current level of development millions of years ago. These entities would possess a highly evolved, unfathomable level of intelligence, making them fully capable of achieving extraordinary, mind-bending feats of pure knowledge, monumental technology, and effortless interstellar travel across the stars. Their staggering scientific achievements and complex cultural advancements would completely transcend our current human comprehension, effectively rendering them completely godlike from our highly limited, primitive perspective. The true diversity of intellect flowing through the universe easily surpasses the absolute boundaries of our wildest imaginations. The ultimate truth of the matter is that our self-proclaimed human progress and high-tech achievements might potentially be completely minuscule and insignificant when viewed on a true galactic scale. In our continuous generational quest to obtain a drastically better understanding of the vastness of the universe and to figure out our true place within it, visionary scientists and forward-thinking futurists have successfully designed a variety of theoretical scales and metrics. One particularly famous and highly influential measure is known as the Kardashev scale, which was originally proposed by a brilliant Russian astrophysicist named Nikolai Kardashev back in the year 1964. This theoretical system offers a highly structured framework for cleanly categorizing hypothetical alien civilizations based entirely upon their total energy consumption rates and their overall level of technological advancement. The scale continues to serve as an incredibly powerful tool for systematically categorizing and contemplating our own future developmental trajectory as a biological species. The original Kardashev scale operates as a highly detailed, four-tiered system that meticulously measures a civilization's absolute capacity to successfully harness, control, and utilize raw energy. The entire scale is built upon the fundamental premise that a civilization's true level of technological sophistication is directly and unchangeably related to the total volume of energy it can successfully command and direct. A Type 1 civilization, which is commonly referred to by space scientists as a planetary civilization, has successfully developed the technological ability to completely harness and utilize absolutely all of the energy resources available on its native home planet. This includes flawlessly capturing and manipulating every single renewable energy source in existence, such as the total planetary output of solar power, wind currents, and deep geothermal energy to seamlessly run their massive global industries and easily satisfy their entire population's energy demands. A civilization at this stage has successfully achieved absolute global unity, completely moving past internal conflicts, and is fully capable of effortlessly manipulating and managing the natural resources of their entire world. Moving up the ladder, a Type 2 civilization, often called a stellar civilization, possesses the mind-boggling ability to completely harness the total energy output of their native host star. To achieve this incredible feat, they can construct truly massive macro-engineering structures like Dyson spheres or giant Dyson swarms that completely encase their sun to capture every single watt of its radiating energy output. A civilization of this advanced caliber can effortlessly tap into the truly vast natural resources of their entire solar system, utilizing them to constantly fuel their advanced technologies, mega engineering projects, and aggressive interstellar exploration programs. Next, a Type 3 civilization, which represents a true galactic civilization, would possess the technological capability to fully utilize the energy resources of an entire galaxy. A species of this scale would be able to effortlessly move entire planets across solar systems, regularly feed active black holes with dying stars to generate power, and even directly manipulate the foundational fabric of spacetime itself. Finally, a theoretical Type 4 civilization would possess such an unfathomable level of power that they would be fully capable of creating an entirely brand new universe from scratch. When we look honestly at this architectural scale, it becomes instantly clear that we as human beings have not even reached the status of a basic Type 1 civilization yet. However, we are no longer a primitive Type 0 civilization either. Currently, human beings possess a calculated score of approximately 0.73 on the Kardashev scale. One world-famous theoretical physicist has carefully estimated that if humanity can successfully manage to increase its global energy consumption by a steady 3% every single year, it will take us anywhere from 100 to 200 more years to finally achieve the official status of a true Type 1 civilization. Once our species successfully unlocks this milestone, we will be fully capable of utilizing absolutely all of the incoming sunlight, wind patterns, and ocean tides available across our world. Global weather conditions will be completely controlled by our collective will, allowing us to effortlessly alter the destructive course of massive earthquakes, neutralize active volcanoes, and safely construct beautiful floating cities in the sky. In a strikingly parallel manner that perfectly mirrors the hierarchical classification of raw power utilization, different civilizations throughout the cosmos will also exhibit entirely distinct methods of communication, which can make it incredibly difficult for different species to ever understand one another. Type 1 civilizations, with their planetary scale energy utilization, are highly likely to rely on what we consider traditional long-distance communication methods, such as utilizing regular radio waves, focused electromagnetic signals, and advanced optical laser communication systems. However, as a species successfully ascends further up the Kardashev scale, they will naturally begin to harness radical new technologies that allow for significantly more advanced, instantaneous, and efficient means of sending data across the void. Type 2 civilizations, for example, might regularly employ highly sophisticated and incredibly advanced forms of cosmic communication, such as modulating active gravitational waves or utilizing complex quantum entanglement-based communication networks that operate completely independent of distance. Type 3 civilizations, fully capable of effortless intergalactic travel, would likely utilize communication methods that sit completely beyond our current primitive human comprehension, such as manipulating stable wormholes or utilizing theoretical subspace communication networks to bridge the massive gaps between distant galaxies. Successfully bridging these communication gaps is absolutely crucial for ever establishing meaningful and effective channels of mutual understanding between worlds. In order for two entirely different alien civilizations to communicate with one another successfully, they would absolutely need to find and agree upon a single, common medium of communication. During our own early primitive endeavors as a developing Type 0 to Type 1 civilization, human beings began their quest for contact by literally sending physical, material messages out into the vacuum of outer space. These physical messages, encapsulated in a few different durable forms, served as our very first primitive means to announce our presence, share our culture, and express our deep curiosity to the vast, unknown cosmic ocean. As our first major serious scientific initiatives to actively communicate with potential extraterrestrial intelligences, we constructed the famous Pioneer plaques and the Voyager golden records, securely fixing them to the exteriors of our earliest robotic spacecraft before launching them forever beyond our solar system. The historic Pioneer plaques, which were carefully designed by the legendary astronomer Carl Sagan and his dedicated team of scientists, contained highly detailed symbolic representations of humanity. This included an engraved map pointing out our exact celestial location in the Milky Way galaxy using pulsars, alongside a detailed silhouette drawing of a human male and female figure standing next to the spacecraft. In a very similar fashion, the world-famous Voyager golden record was carefully curated by a specialized scientific committee also led by Sagan. This golden record contained a rich, deeply beautiful collection of natural Earth sounds, photographs of human life, and various musical tracks from cultures all over the globe, designed to showcase the incredible diversity of life and human culture on Earth to anyone who might find it. Today, those identical Voyager space probes are travelling over 23 billion kilometres, or roughly 14 billion miles, completely away from their home planet, officially making them the most distant man-made objects currently in physical existence. However, while these physical cosmic messages beautifully symbolised our deep human curiosity and our profound desire for interstellar contact, they also present massive, significant limitations when it comes to effectively establishing any kind of meaningful, two-way communication. The truly mind-boggling vastness of empty space poses a monumental, almost impossible challenge when it comes to another species ever successfully locating and encountering a tiny physical message floating in the cosmos. The engraved metal plaques and golden records launched into space are completely microscopic compared to the truly immense multi-light-year areas of emptiness that they must slowly traverse over time. Outer space is incredibly vast and almost entirely empty, rendering it highly unlikely for any random extraterrestrial civilization to ever stumble across our plaques or records purely by chance. Additionally, these physical messages are completely restricted by their nature to a strictly unidirectional form of communication. They operate perfectly as a beautiful time capsule representing our historical existence and our cosmic aspirations. But they completely lack any physical ability to receive incoming messages or transmit a response back to us from any potential recipient. Even if an incredibly advanced alien civilization were to somehow run directly into these messages out in the void, the complete absence of a built-in mechanism for them to respond directly completely prevents the establishment of a meaningful dialogue. This strictly one-way nature of physical space messages severely limits any potential for a true, interactive exchange of groundbreaking ideas, scientific knowledge, and rich cultural understanding between different interstellar civilizations. Finally, the truly colossal distances separating different celestial objects mean that the physical journey of these spacecraft will span hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. In the specific case of the travelling Voyager golden records, it would take literal eons for any potential reply to ever make its way back to Earth. The extreme timescales involved in physical interstellar communication make it completely impractical for immediate or real-time exchanges, deeply impeding the possibilities of timely interaction and mutual cosmic learning. After spending more than 60 full years actively broadcasting various artificial signals out into space and meticulously scanning the local skies to detect any incoming artificial signals, humanity has completely failed to find absolutely anything. We remain entirely unheard, drifting silently in our corner of the galaxy. In our modern world today, the primary global scientific institution completely devoted to the organized search for extraterrestrial intelligence is a world-renowned project known as SETI, which is the official abbreviation for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. This monumental scientific project is completely based upon the strategic use of giant, highly sensitive radio telescopes located all over our planet. These massive radio telescopes are specifically designed to receive and analyze cosmic radio waves coming from deep space. Because we currently lack the technology to physically travel across light years aboard manned spacecraft to go look for intelligent life by hand, what we must look for instead are artificial radio signals traveling through the airwaves. Dedicated scientists utilize these giant radio telescopes spread entirely around the globe to endlessly scan the dark skies, hunting for specific, narrow-band radio signals that conspicuously and undeniably stand out against the constant, chaotic backdrop of natural cosmic noise. This advanced setup essentially allows modern astronomers to systematically eavesdrop on the faintest whispers of the universe. The entire process functions a lot like tuning your regular FM car radio to find the exact matching frequency of a distant radio station. Scientists frequently concentrate their searches for these alien signals within a very specific frequency range known as the waterhole. This specific frequency band neatly encompasses the space between the natural hydrogen line and the hydroxyl line. The core scientific theory behind this choice is that these specific frequencies represent the absolute most natural, logical choice for interstellar communication. This is due to their close proximity in the electromagnetic spectrum to the natural radio emissions of hydrogen and hydroxyl, which happen to be the two most incredibly abundant and widespread elements found throughout the entire universe. However, even if we were to successfully intercept one of these signals tomorrow, a massive, towering hurdle still stands directly in our path: the universal language barrier. Language serves as the absolute fundamental bedrock of all human communication, allowing us to seamlessly convey complex abstract ideas, deep emotions, and multi-generational knowledge to one another. But when it comes to interacting with completely alien, extraterrestrial beings, the very notion of what constitutes a language becomes incredibly difficult for our minds to even comprehend. How do we begin to write a message to an intelligence that shares absolutely zero cultural, biological, or evolutionary history with our species? To truly establish mutual communication with an extraterrestrial intelligence, we must locate a universal framework that transcends all cultural, biological, and historical boundaries. This foundational framework is none other than the immutable language of mathematics. Across the endless stretches of the cosmos, 2 + 2 will always equal 4, and the fundamental properties of a circle will remain entirely unchangeable regardless of which galaxy you reside in. It is for this exact reason that pioneering space scientists have continuously focused on using basic mathematical principles, geometric shapes, and fundamental physical constants as the primary foundation for building interstellar messages. The core scientific theory is that any alien civilization advanced enough to construct a radio telescope to intercept our signals must also possess a deep, comprehensive understanding of these exact same mathematical rules. Mathematics functions as the ultimate universal translator, bridging the massive intellectual gaps between entirely different species. One of the most legendary and famous attempts to utilize this mathematical methodology occurred in the year 1974, with the transmission of the historic Arecibo message. Broadcast from the massive Arecibo Radio Observatory in Puerto Rico, this highly sophisticated signal was intentionally beamed toward a dense cluster of stars known as Messier 13, located roughly 25,000 light-years away from Earth. The message itself was elegantly simple, yet deeply complex, consisting of exactly 1,679 binary digits of information, represented as a sequence of ones and zeros. This specific number was chosen with absolute mathematical precision, because 1,679 is a semi-prime number, meaning it is the unique product of two prime numbers, 23 and 73. The underlying logic was that an intelligent recipient would instantly recognize this mathematical property and arrange the binary grid into a visual matrix of 23 columns and 73 rows. When correctly arranged, this digital grid reveals a detailed pictogram that conveys fundamental details about humanity. It includes a basic counting system from 1 to 10, the atomic numbers of the essential elements that form human DNA, the chemical formulas for the sugars and bases that structure our genetic code, a graphic representation of the double helix structure of DNA, a simple silhouette of a human being alongside our average physical height, the total population of Earth at that time, and a detailed map pointing out our solar system and the specific radio telescope that transmitted the signal. This historic broadcast represents one of our most serious, structured attempts to speak directly to the cosmos using the pure, untainted language of mathematics. However, even as we continuously look outward into the deep void, we must also turn our scientific curiosity back inward to study the fundamental nature of the universe itself. One of the most critical, all-encompassing forces ruling the entire cosmos is gravity. It is the invisible, unyielding glue that tightly holds entire galaxies together, keeps planets locked in steady orbits around their host stars, and prevents our own atmosphere from drifting away into the cold vacuum of space. Yet, despite its total and complete dominance over our physical reality, gravity remains one of the most deeply mysterious and least understood forces in all of modern physics. It operates at all times, across all distances, pulling matter together with a silent, persistent strength that shapes the entire architecture of the cosmos. Every single object possessing mass exerts a gravitational pull on every other object around it, creating a complex, interconnected web of physical attraction that dictates the precise movements of everything from microscopic dust particles to supermassive black holes. To truly understand how our comprehension of this cosmic force evolved, we must look back to the groundbreaking work of Sir Isaac Newton in the late 17th century. Newton completely revolutionized the scientific world by putting forward his famous universal law of gravitation. He proposed that gravity is an attractive force that acts instantaneously across any distance, pulling two objects together with a strength that is directly proportional to their total mass and inversely proportional to the square of the distance separating them. This mathematical formula was an absolute triumph, allowing astronomers to calculate the orbits of planets with astonishing accuracy and successfully predict the movements of celestial bodies with unprecedented precision. Newton's laws perfectly explained the regular clockwork movements of our solar system, providing a solid, dependable framework that ruled the scientific community for over 2 full centuries. Yet, despite the incredible success of his mathematical formulas, Newton himself was deeply troubled by a massive, glaring flaw in his own theory. He was completely unable to explain the actual physical mechanism behind gravity. How could two objects separated by millions of miles of empty, vacant space instantly exert a physical force on one another without any physical medium connecting them? This concept, which Newton famously described as action at a distance, felt deeply unscientific and almost magical even to him. His equations described exactly what gravity did with beautiful precision, but they completely failed to answer the fundamental question of what gravity actually is and how it truly works across the void. The scientific community simply accepted this mystery for generations, using Newton's highly practical math while remaining completely in the dark regarding the true nature of the force itself. This long-standing mystery remained completely unsolved until the arrival of Albert Einstein in the early 20th century. Einstein completely shattered the Newtonian view of the universe with his revolutionary theory of general relativity, introduced in 1915. He proposed that space and time are not two separate stagnant backdrops against which the events of the universe take place. Instead, they are tightly woven together into a single flexible four-dimensional fabric known as space-time. Einstein argued that gravity is not a mysterious, invisible physical force travelling through space at all. Rather, gravity is the direct geometric consequence of mass and energy warping and bending the literal fabric of space-time itself. To visualize this revolutionary concept, imagine a large, tightly stretched sheet of rubber. If you place a heavy bowling ball directly in the center of the sheet, its weight will cause the rubber fabric to sag and form a deep, sloping depression. Now, if you take a tiny marble and roll it across the sheet, it will naturally spiral inward toward the bowling ball. The marble isn't being pulled by an invisible magical force originating from the bowling ball. It is simply following the natural curved path created by the warping of the rubber sheet itself. In this elegant model, the bowling ball represents a massive celestial body like our Sun. The marble represents a planet like Earth, and the rubber sheet represents the literal fabric of space-time. Earth orbits the Sun not because of an instantaneous physical tug across the vacuum, but because it is simply moving along the natural curved geometry of the space-time fabric that the Sun's massive weight has warped. Einstein's brilliant insight completely redefined our understanding of the universe, successfully resolving Newton's dilemma regarding action at a distance. It proved that gravity does not travel instantaneously, but is strictly limited by the absolute speed of light. If our Sun were to suddenly vanish from existence this exact second, Newton's theory suggested that Earth would instantly fly off into the dark void in a straight line. Einstein's theory, however, proved that the sudden disappearance of the Sun would create a massive gravitational wave, a literal ripple in the fabric of space-time that would travel across space at the speed of light. Because it takes light roughly 8 minutes to travel from the Sun to Earth, our planet would continue to orbit normally for 8 full minutes, completely oblivious to the Sun's absence, until the space-time ripple finally reached our position and released us from our orbit. General relativity has successfully passed every single rigorous scientific test thrown at it over the past century with absolute flying colours. It perfectly predicted the precise bending of starlight around massive objects during solar eclipses, explained the complex orbital anomalies of the planet Mercury that had completely baffled Newtonian astronomers, and predicted the existence of black holes and gravitational waves, both of which have now been directly observed and confirmed by modern technological instruments. Yet, even with this monumental success, modern physicists are well aware that Einstein's brilliant description of gravity is still not the final, complete answer to the ultimate nature of the universe. The great crisis in modern physics stems from a massive, fundamental incompatibility between general relativity and the other pillar of modern science, quantum mechanics. While general relativity works flawlessly when describing the macrocosmos ruling over massive stars, giant planets and swirling galaxies, quantum mechanics works with absolute perfection when describing the microcosmos, ruling over the bizarre, probabilistic behavior of subatomic particles like electrons, protons, and quarks. The core issue is that these two highly successful theories utilize completely different and contradictory rulebooks. General relativity views spacetime as a smooth, continuous, predictable fabric that bends elegantly under the influence of mass. Quantum mechanics, conversely, views the subatomic world as a chaotic, choppy, unpredictable arena ruled entirely by random fluctuations, quantum uncertainty, and discrete packets of energy. When scientists attempt to apply the smooth mathematical equations of general relativity to the ultra-tiny chaotic scales of the quantum world, the mathematics completely break down, yielding nonsensical answers like infinite density and infinite gravity. This fundamental clash means that our current understanding of physical reality is deeply fractured. We possess two entirely separate, highly accurate theories that are completely incapable of talking to one another. To resolve this monumental crisis, modern physicists are aggressively searching for a unified theory of everything, a single, all-encompassing framework that can seamlessly merge gravity with the other three fundamental forces of nature: electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. One of the most prominent and fiercely debated candidates for this unified framework is string theory. This radical mathematical concept suggests that the fundamental building blocks of the universe are not zero-dimensional, point-like subatomic particles as traditionally believed. Instead, they are unimaginably tiny, one-dimensional vibrating strands of energy called strings. Just as the distinct vibration frequencies of a violin string produce entirely different musical notes, the unique vibration frequencies of these cosmic strings generate the specific properties of different subatomic particles, such as their mass, electrical charge, and spin. In the elegant framework of string theory, all the diverse matter and forces in the universe are nothing more than a grand cosmic symphony vibrating through the fabric of reality. Crucially, string theory naturally includes a unique vibrating string that possesses the exact quantum properties of a graviton, the hypothetical subatomic particle that would mediate the force of gravity at a quantum level. This natural inclusion offers a potential bridge to finally unite gravity with the quantum world. However, string theory comes with a massive mind-bending catch that challenges our basic understanding of reality. For its complex mathematical equations to work consistently without breaking down, the universe cannot possess just the four traditional dimensions that human beings can actively perceive: length, width, height, and time. Instead, string theory demands the existence of at least 10 or 11 separate dimensions. To explain why we cannot see these extra dimensions on a daily basis, theorists argue that they are curled up and tightly compacted into unimaginably microscopic spaces, far too small for our primitive human eyes or even our most advanced scientific instruments to ever detect. Imagine looking at a regular garden hose from a great distance away. To your eyes, the hose looks like a simple, one-dimensional line stretching across the grass. However, if you approach the hose and study it up close, you realize it possesses a second dimension, a circular circumference that wraps entirely around it. A tiny ant walking on the surface of that hose can move not only forward and backward along its length, but also loop completely around its circular dimension. String theory suggests that every single point in our familiar three-dimensional space contains these extra hyper-complex multi-dimensional geometries curled up at a microscopic level, completely hidden from our macroscopic view of the cosmos. As we continue to struggle with these profound theoretical questions, scientists are also actively designing advanced experiments to test the absolute boundaries of gravity in physical reality. One of the most fascinating avenues of modern gravitational research involves studying highly precise satellite measurements and investigating strange orbital anomalies that occur during deep space planetary flybys. These subtle, unexplained variations in spacecraft speeds continue to challenge our understanding, hinting at potential gaps in our current gravitational models and pushing the absolute limits of astrophysics. To completely grasp the profound architectural marvels of our expansive universe, we must look closely at a highly specific, deeply bewildering cosmic phenomenon that has quietly puzzled the global scientific community for several decades. This specific riddle is officially known to modern astronomers as the Flyby anomaly. It describes an unexpected, minute increase in kinetic energy and velocity that occurs whenever a robotic deep space exploration probe performs a close gravity assist maneuver around a massive planetary body like Earth. A gravity assist is a standard, highly calculated spaceflight maneuver where mission engineers deliberately steer a spacecraft close to a moving planet to successfully steal a tiny fraction of its orbital momentum. This stolen energy essentially functions as a natural cosmic slingshot, drastically accelerating the travelling probe forward into the deep void without requiring the vessel to consume any of its highly limited, heavy chemical rocket fuel resources. This classic orbital mechanic maneuver has been flawlessly executed by space agencies for generations, allowing us to send exploratory missions to the absolute outer edges of our solar system and beyond. However, as our tracking technologies and monitoring equipment grew vastly more precise toward the end of the 20th century, engineers began to spot a very faint, highly unexplainable discrepancy in their raw navigational data. Whenever specific spacecraft brushed past Earth during these high-speed planetary flybys, their final post-flyby velocity turned out to be slightly faster than the exact calculations predicted by the traditional laws of physics. The very first time this strange phenomenon was officially noticed by NASA engineers was all the way back in the year 1990, during the historic flight of the highly celebrated Galileo spacecraft. The Galileo probe was on an ambitious, long-duration journey to systematically study the giant gas planet Jupiter and its fascinating collection of unique moons. To gather the immense amount of speed required to reach the outer solar system, the spacecraft was precisely routed to perform a close, high-speed gravitational flyby around its home planet Earth. As the giant probe approached its closest point of contact with Earth's upper atmosphere, highly advanced radio tracking stations on the ground continuously monitored its precise position and speed using the Doppler shift of its transmitted signals. But as Galileo successfully completed its sweeping loop and began to zip away into deep space, the ground controllers looked at their telemetry screens in absolute bewilderment. The data clearly showed that the probe had gained an extra, highly unexpected boost in speed. It was a tiny velocity increase of exactly 3.92 millimeters per second, while a discrepancy of less than 4 millimeters per second sounds completely microscopic and totally insignificant to the average person. It represents a massive, glaring error to a rocket scientist. In the highly precise discipline of orbital mechanics, where paths across millions of miles are calculated down to the literal centimetre, an unexpected velocity change of this scale is a towering deviation. Engineers initially assumed that this minute speed increase was simply the direct result of a minor software glitch, a tiny calculation error, or perhaps some minor unmapped atmospheric drag pushing against the physical body of the spacecraft. However, after spending months rigorously checking and rechecking every single line of code and reviewing every mathematical equation, the scientific team was completely unable to uncover a single mistake or find a conventional cause for the anomaly. The mystery grew significantly more intense and deeply concerning 8 years later, in the year 1998, when a completely different spacecraft encountered the exact same bizarre phenomenon. This time it was NASA's Near-Earth Asteroid Rendezvous probe, which is commonly referred to by scientists as the NEAR spacecraft. The NEAR mission was specifically designed to travel to and orbit the asteroid Eros to conduct a highly detailed, long-term scientific analysis of its material composition. Just like Galileo before it, the NEAR probe required a gravitational slingshot maneuver around Earth to successfully alter its trajectory and boost its speed enough to intercept its distant asteroid target. As the spacecraft completed its close approach, and began to exit Earth's immediate gravitational field, the ground tracking stations recorded an unexpected velocity jump. The probe had gained a sudden, unexplainable velocity increase of exactly 13.46 millimeters per second. This dramatic second occurrence completely shattered any remaining comforting ideas that the initial Galileo anomaly was merely a one-time fluke or a minor technical glitch. The reality was now undeniable, a completely different spacecraft, featuring an entirely unique physical design, utilizing totally distinct instrumentation, and traveling on a completely separate orbital path, had experienced the exact same type of unexplainable velocity boost when executing a flyby around Earth. This stunning replication forced the international scientific community to sit up and realize that they were dealing with a genuine, systemic cosmic mystery that defied conventional explanation. As the years rolled forward, the flyby anomaly continued to show up like a persistent ghost in the telemetry data of several other major deep space missions. In the year 2005, NASA's high-tech Messenger spacecraft, which was on a complex, multi-year journey to reach and orbit the scorched planet Mercury, performed a necessary gravity assist maneuver around Earth. When the scientific teams analyzed the post-flyby data, they discovered that the Messenger probe had also experienced a minute, unexplainable speed increase, gaining an extra 0.02 millimeters per second of velocity. Then, just a few years later in 2008, the European Space Agency's celebrated Rosetta spacecraft, which was on an incredibly historic mission to successfully chase down and land a robotic probe on the surface of a moving comet, experienced an even more dramatic speed boost during one of its scheduled Earth flybys. The Rosetta probe suddenly gained an extra unexplainable velocity increase of 1.80 millimeters per second. The recurring presence of this anomaly across so many distinct, highly calculated space missions made it completely clear that our understanding of gravity was missing something fundamental. Faced with this persistent orbital puzzle, physicists and astronomers all over the globe aggressively began to brainstorm a wide variety of potential explanations, desperately trying to save the traditional laws of physics from being rewritten. The very first wave of common theories naturally focused on looking for hidden, unmapped environmental forces operating within the immediate vicinity of Earth. Scientists carefully investigated whether the unexpected speed boosts could be caused by the faint, subtle drag of Earth's uppermost atmospheric layers pushing against the spacecraft structures. However, detailed aerodynamic modelling quickly proved that atmospheric drag would actually slow a travelling spacecraft down rather than speed it up, completely ruling out that hypothesis. Other researchers investigated whether the subtle physical pressure of solar radiation, the literal momentum of photons streaming from the sun and bouncing off the probe's shiny metallic surfaces, could be responsible for the extra push. But highly precise calculations soon demonstrated that solar radiation pressure was vastly too weak to account for the specific millimeter per second velocity changes recorded in the data. When those initial explanations failed to hold water, scientists turned their attention toward investigating the complex internal systems of the spacecraft themselves. They carefully analyzed whether the unexplainable speed changes could be caused by the tiny, subtle physical thrust generated by the asymmetric leakage of heat or thermal radiation from the onboard electronics and nuclear batteries. This phenomenon, known as thermal recoil force, had famously been discovered to be the primary cause behind the unexplainable deceleration of the distant Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft, a mystery known for decades as the Pioneer anomaly. However, when engineers applied the exact same rigorous thermal modelling to the Galileo, NEAR and Rosetta probes, they discovered that the unique physical designs and heat dissipation patterns of these specific vessels could not generate anywhere near enough directional thrust to cause the observed flyby speed increases. The anomaly remained completely unyielding stubbornly resisting every attempt to explain it away using conventional mechanical or environmental causes. With all traditional explanations completely exhausted, a growing number of forward-thinking theoretical physicists began to contemplate a much more radical and thrilling possibility. What if the Flyby anomaly is not an error in our engineering data, but is instead definitive proof that our fundamental understanding of gravity itself is flawed? For over a century, Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity has served as the absolute unquestioned bedrock of modern gravitational physics, perfectly predicting the movements of planets and stars with breathtaking accuracy. Yet the persistent existence of the Flyby anomaly hints that there might be specific extreme situations, such as a spacecraft moving at an incredibly high velocity along a hyper-precise hyperbolic trajectory close to a rotating mass, where Einstein's equations fail to capture the full picture of physical reality. It suggests that there may be hidden, subtle nuances to the gravitational interaction that only manifest under these highly specific orbital conditions, subtly altering the kinetic energy of an object in ways that our current mathematical models simply cannot predict. To systematically explore this thrilling possibility and try to find a definitive answer to the riddle, researchers began to closely study whether the anomaly was somehow linked to the physical rotation of the planet itself. One of the most intriguing mathematical models put forward to explain the speed boosts involves a highly complex relativistic phenomenon known as frame dragging, or the lens-Thirring effect. According to Einstein's equations, a massive spinning object like Earth does not just sit passively in the fabric of space-time. Instead, as the planet rotates on its axis, its immense mass actively drags the literal fabric of surrounding space-time along with it, creating a subtle, swirling cosmic vortex that twists the local geometry of space and time. Some physicists theorize that when a high-speed spacecraft enters this swirling space-time vortex during a close planetary flyby, it might interact with the frame dragging effect in a way that allows the probe to absorb a tiny extra boost of kinetic energy directly from the planet's rotational momentum, resulting in the observed velocity increase. However, when mainstream scientists calculated the exact mathematical strength of Earth's frame dragging effect, they discovered that it is far too weak by a factor of several thousands to account for the large millimeter-per-second speed jumps recorded by the NEAR and Galileo probes. The complete failure of both conventional engineering explanations and standard relativistic models has left the global scientific community in a state of deeply fascinating suspense. Today, the Flyby anomaly stands as one of the most compelling and unresolved frontiers in modern astrophysics, serving as a constant, humbling reminder that our grasp of the cosmos is still frustratingly incomplete. It acts as a brilliant beacon pointing toward the absolute boundaries of our knowledge, suggesting that just beneath the surface of our familiar, well-mapped physical laws lies a deeper, completely unmapped layer of cosmic reality waiting to be uncovered. Until we can successfully launch dedicated, highly specialized scientific satellites designed specifically to measure and analyze gravity with unprecedented sensitivity in the exact regions where these anomalies occur, the true cause behind these mysterious spacecraft speed boosts will continue to elude our grasp, leaving the door wide open for a revolutionary breakthrough that could completely transform our understanding of the universe. To completely break through these profound scientific barriers and finally unlock the deep structural puzzles that shroud our universe, global researchers are actively shifting away from pure ground-based laboratory testing and look instead toward executing pioneering space missions. The most critical and highly anticipated of these upcoming orbital experiments is an incredibly advanced satellite initiative known as STEP, which serves as the official scientific abbreviation for the satellite test of the equivalence principle. This groundbreaking project has been meticulously designed and carefully planned through an international collaborative partnership uniting the top space engineers at NASA alongside the leading scientific minds at the European Space Agency. The central, singular scientific objective of the STEP mission is to put one of the most fundamental, ancient assumptions in all of physics to the absolute ultimate test. This assumption is known as the equivalence principle, and it acts as the primary foundation supporting Albert Einstein's famous theory of general relativity. The equivalence principle itself is a beautifully straightforward yet deeply profound rule that dictates how gravity behaves. It explicitly states that when two entirely different objects are dropped inside a complete vacuum, where there is absolutely no air resistance or atmospheric friction to slow things down, both objects will fall toward the ground at the exact same rate of acceleration, regardless of their internal composition, physical shape, or total mass. This means that if you were to stand inside a sealed vacuum chamber and drop a solid ball made of heavy lead alongside a light bird feather at the exact same fraction of a second, they would hit the floor simultaneously. This exact concept was famously demonstrated in a real-world environment during the historic Apollo 15 lunar mission, when astronaut David Scott stood on the surface of the moon and dropped a heavy steel hammer and a lightweight falcon feather at the same time, showing the entire world as they fell perfectly in unison and struck the dust together. While this principle looks perfectly solid and completely undeniable based on our everyday macroscopic observations, a massive conflict arises when we try to zoom in and look at gravity through the highly chaotic lens of modern quantum mechanics. Many of the leading hyper-complex mathematical frameworks that attempt to successfully unify gravity with subatomic physics such as string theory and quantum gravity models explicitly predict that the equivalence principle will eventually break down when it is analysed at an incredibly minute quantum scale. These cutting-edge theories suggest that entirely different types of matter will actually experience incredibly faint, almost imperceptible differences in gravitational attraction based on their specific subatomic properties, such as the total number of protons or neutrons packed inside their atomic nuclei. Finding even the most minuscule, microscopic violation of the equivalence principle would be an absolute earthquake for the scientific community, as it would instantly prove that Einstein's description of gravity is incomplete and provide the very first material pathway to building a unified theory of everything. Testing this principle down on the surface of the Earth is an incredibly difficult and deeply frustrating challenge for experimental physicists, because our planet is a noisy environment filled with constant intrusive physical disruptions. The delicate instruments required to measure gravity at such hypersensitive scales are continuously thrown off by subtle seismic vibrations rolling through the ground, minor shifts in local temperature, the faint magnetic pulls of nearby electrical equipment, and the unavoidable, non-stop shaking caused by human activity and industrial machinery. Trying to detect an incredibly tiny quantum gravitational variation amidst this massive background noise is practically impossible. This is precisely why the STEP mission is completely abandoning the ground and heading deep into the pristine environment of outer space. By placing the entire laboratory setup inside a satellite orbiting high above Earth's atmosphere, scientists can effectively escape the noisy planet and isolate their experiments inside a state of continuous, unyielding freefall. The internal engineering design of the STEP satellite is an absolute masterpiece of modern technological innovation. The core scientific payload consists of several sets of highly specialized, ultra-precise test masses shaped like concentric cylinders, which are made out of entirely different metallic alloys, such as high-purity platinum iridium and lightweight beryllium. These metallic cylinders are carefully suspended inside a collection of highly advanced superconducting differential accelerometers, which utilize powerful magnetic fields to hold the test weights weightlessly in place without letting them physically touch any of the surrounding mechanical structures. The entire apparatus is then completely sealed inside a giant, super-insulated container filled with liquid helium, which cools the core electronics down to a temperature that sits just a tiny fraction of a degree above absolute zero. This extreme cooling process is absolutely critical because it completely neutralizes any internal thermal noise and unlocks the phenomenon of superconductivity, allowing the satellite's sensors to monitor the movements of the cylindrical masses with unprecedented precision. As the STEP satellite smoothly glides along its orbital trajectory around the Earth, it will exist in a permanent state of orbital free fall, which essentially means the test cylinders inside the payload are continuously falling around the planet. If the ancient equivalence principle holds perfectly true at all scales, then the distinct cylinders, despite being constructed from completely different chemical elements, will fall at the exact same rate, keeping their positions perfectly aligned with one another inside the vacuum chamber. However, if any of the radical quantum gravity theories are correct, the different materials will experience an incredibly subtle difference in gravitational pull. This tiny variation will cause one cylinder to accelerate a fraction of a millimeter faster than its partner, creating a microscopic displacement between the two weights. The satellite's hypersensitive superconducting quantum interference devices, known as SQUIDs, are fully capable of measuring these tiny movements down to an accuracy of 1 part in 10 to the 17th power, a level of sensitivity so extreme it can detect a spatial variation vastly smaller than the width of a single atomic nucleus. Furthermore, because the STEP satellite will possess the total freedom to observe and analyze gravity with this exceptional sensitivity, while operating completely free from atmospheric interference, it can seamlessly track both the primary gravitational forces exerted by the Earth and the long-range pulls coming from the Sun. This unique orbital positioning allows the spacecraft to follow a highly specialized path that takes it directly through the various altitudes and spatial distances at which anomalies were previously observed during the historic Galileo and near deep space flybies. If a unique, unmapped variation in gravity is indeed the true underlying cause of the mysterious flyby anomalies, the hypersensitive instruments aboard STEP should be fully capable of precisely demonstrating exactly how the magnitude of this physical effect changes in direct relation to its distance from the Earth. Thus, while the primary mission focus of the STEP satellite is centered on radically advancing our fundamental understanding of quantum physics, it also holds the incredible secondary potential to finally unlock the long-standing secrets of the flyby anomaly once and for all. Throughout the entire course of human history on this planet, our species has successfully built an absolutely incredible, breathtaking body of knowledge regarding the vast universe that surrounds us. We have successfully mapped the orbits of distant planets, peered back in time to glimpse the leftover radiation of the Big Bang, and successfully untangled the complex mathematical equations that dictate the movements of stars and galaxies. However, when we look honestly at the vast scale of the cosmos, we must humbly realize that we are still standing at the absolute beginning of this epic journey of discovery. The universe remains a dense twilight realm filled with enigmatic secrets, completely replete with unexplained anomalies, mind-bending paradoxes, and mysterious cosmic phenomena that are actively shaped by completely unseen forces like dark matter and dark energy. It is incredibly useful to visualize our current scientific understanding as a giant, infinite jigsaw puzzle made up of an endless number of complex, interlocking pieces. As it stands today, humanity has only managed to locate and assemble a small fraction of these pieces, giving us a beautiful but highly restricted glimpse of the larger picture. Every single breakthrough we achieve and every new anomaly we uncover simply reveals a collection of brand new questions, reminding us that the boundary of our knowledge is constantly shifting forward. We must remain relentlessly curious, continuously pushing the limits of our technology and daring to question our most foundational assumptions about reality, because it is only through this unyielding quest for truth that we can hope to eventually shine a bright light on the deepest mysteries of the universe.